Welcome everyone to our first webinar in our webinar series for the Impact Libraries project, which stands for Improving Assessment of Computational Thinking in Libraries. My name is Megha Subramaniam, and I'm a professor at the College of Information Studies at the University of Maryland. I'm joined today by Dr. David Weintraub. David is an assistant professor at the College of Education and the College of Information Studies. And we also have Nitsan Koren. Nitsan is a doctoral candidate at the College of Information Studies who has been working with us for the past 3 years to build these assessment tools. So we are super delighted to be here to unveil our assessment tools today. And this webinar specifically will be focused on assessment tools to collect direct feedback from youth, which is two tools that we'll be highlighting today: the Build Your Own Interview Protocol and also Talkback Boards. We'd like to remind you that we have 2 more webinars that are upcoming, and we invite you to either join us or watch the recording if you will miss it. We have one on a focus on observation tools, sharing 3 assessment tools, which is Design Challenge, Computational Thinking Conceptual Learning Rubric, and also Dispositions Checklist. Our last webinar will be demonstrating a combination of direct feedback and self-reflection, where we'll be sharing 2 assessment tools: the Computational Thinking Confidence Survey and also the Facilitator Self-Assessment. So before we begin, we would like to thank Institute of Museum and Library Services for their generous funding of this work. Nitsan will post the link to our website, and we welcome you throughout this webinar today to play a little bit with the website and also look at our tools. So here's our presentation outline for today. We hope to wrap up in 45 minutes and then leave some time at the end for Q&A. You can post the question using the Q&A button that you see in the panel in your screen. And we will be answering those questions at the end of the presentation or throughout the session using the Q&A chat that we have. So today we'll start with an overview, and then we'll look at, we'll introduce you to the 7 computational thinking outcomes and assessment tools. We'll also introduce you to the process of assessment. Where do you start and how do you end? We'll also share with you the 2 tools that we will talk about today: the interview protocol and Talkback Boards, and then we'll wrap up. So just a quick check. If you can put this in the chat, we would like to know, are you facilitating any computational thinking programs now, or have you facilitated computational thinking programs in the past? So if you can just use the chat and provide the answers, that would be great. We would just like to know who is in the room and what kind of interest do you have on computational thinking? Great, so keep the answers coming. So I see kind of a mix of people who have done it in the past and who are thinking of doing it in the summer, and also people who have not done it. So it's great to have this mix in the group. So thank you so much for your responses, and keep them coming as you get a chance to post them in the chat. So let's start with a little bit of overview of our work in terms of our project, our goals, and some definitions that we would like to get out here so that everybody is in the same page. So our work has 3 main goals. For the past over 3 years, we've been working on this project. And our goals have been to identify the computational thinking outcomes that youth develop through participating in programs offered by public libraries. Then we went ahead and created the assessment tools for library staff to use to accurately measure computational thinking outcomes in their youth programs. And then we also have, with the library staff that worked with us, they also used it to improve existing programming. So we provided guidance for public library staff to utilize our computational thinking assessment tools to improve and refine the programs offered by their libraries. And you can see this guidance in the suite of assessment tools that we will unveil today. So you may ask a couple of questions, right? So what is computational thinking? Why should we care about computational thinking? And most so, why should we assess computational thinking? So I'm just going to, in this one slide, I'm going to try to cover all of it. So the first of all, there has been a lot of initiative on computational thinking, specifically even from the federal government level. So the White House Computer Science for All initiative was launched in 2016. And the goal was to empower all American students from kindergarten to high school to learn computer science and be equipped with computational thinking skills that they need to be creators in this economy and not just consumers, and also to be active citizens in our technology-driven world. So the concept of computational thinking is really important to all young people. And this was primarily popularized by an article written by Janet Wing. This was an influential article that she wrote in 2006. So in this article, she defined computational thinking as a fundamental skill for everyone, not just computer scientists. And she further along said that computational thinking should be added along with reading, writing, and math as an essential skill for all students. Not surprising, there is very little consensus on the definition of computational thinking. So it's generally agreed that computational thinking practices includes problem decomposition, developing and also using abstraction, also defining algorithms, debugging, and also concepts that are really embedded within the practice of computer programming, such as logic, conditional logic, iteration, parallelization, and so on. So now I get to the main point here that I want to get across, which is why assessing computational thinking is important. So the first bullet here that you see, through data that's collected, you can demonstrate the impact of computational thinking programs to your supervisors, to stakeholders, and also funders. You can use the data to ask for more resources and also support the continuation of the program. Also, assessing computational thinking program allows you to improve the design and delivery of programming and for future iterations of the same program, right? So you can use the data that you've collected to start a new one, start a new computational thinking program. You can use it even to sunset a program that you realize that youth are not learning anything from them. Especially, it's really, we have been seeing our library staff who have worked with us, they're really using it to improve the design of their program. So it gets better in every iteration if you collect data. Thirdly, based on the data that you can collect, you can also make decisions on how your program can better connect to youth interest in learning. And connecting it to youth interest is what makes library computational thinking programming so unique and appealing to you. And lastly, assessing and asking youth to provide feedback gives youth voice to tell you what they want to learn and how. So I'm going to very quickly go through this. So the first definition that I would like to get across is what are learning outcomes. So learning outcomes articulate what one should know or can do after completing a course or a program. Learning outcomes are statements of knowledge, skills, and abilities individuals can demonstrate upon completion of a learning experience or sequence of learning experiences. Learning outcomes should be specific. They should address one element. It should be simple. It should be well-defined. It should be realistic, aimed at the goal of an entire program or a session that you have, and it aligns with what is being facilitated or taught in that session. Next definition, what are assessment tools? Assessment tools help facilitators collect and analyze data to measure learning outcomes. Some tools are used to collect numerical or quantitative data. Others are used to just collect qualitative data, and some do both, collect quantitative and qualitative data. So I'm going to move on to the next piece of this, which we're going to introduce you to the 7 computational thinking outcomes and assessment tools designed for this project. That we did not come up with this by ourselves. We discovered this through our work, and you can read about the work that we have done in the publication section of our website. But this one is done with library staff. We discovered these outcomes that are important to assess in youth computational thinking program, specifically in libraries. And we'll be sharing 2 of the 7 assessment tools today. So I'm going to say this multiple times in this next 5 minutes that I have. Always choose a tool based on the outcome that you would like to achieve in your computational thinking program that you are or will be offering to your youth. Always start with the outcome and not think about the tools first. We have tools that you can use to measure the following outcomes: positive city experiences, computational thinking skills, computational thinking confidence, access and equity, which is really big in libraries, computational thinking dispositions, future learning and career, and computational thinking conceptual learning. Just going to give you like 10 seconds to just look at this slide. Nitsan, if you can post the link to the outcome selection page on our website, that would be great. And on that page that Nitsan will be posting or has posted, you will see the definitions as well as you scroll through each of our outcomes. So once you've selected the outcomes that you want to assess for your program, you will be given choices on the tools that you would like to use. Right? So we have all the tools here that you can see here. We have checklist, we have design challenge, we have rubric, we have survey, we have talkback boards, we have build your own interview protocol, and we have self-assessment. So if you choose, for example, if you choose computational thinking dispositions, you'll be given tools that you can choose from, which includes checklists, which includes talkback boards, and build your own interview protocol. So it always starts with outcomes. So let me summarize the assessment process for you, and then David and Nitsan will talk you through some of the remaining steps in terms of the process of assessment. So let me start with this. So what you see on the screen here, which will appear, is that the process you should undertake when you're thinking about assessment. First, as I've mentioned twice already, you identify an outcome and you identify learning outcomes that you would like to assess. Then you select a tool. And then you prepare to use the assessment tool, which we will show how today, at least for 2. And then you collect the data. And then you reflect on the data. You analyze the responses and reflect on the program results. Oftentimes, we collect data, but then we don't know what to do with it. So our suite of assessment tools come with data analysis sheets, reflection questions, and even some tools that actually have nice visualizations that you can generate. So first step, again, sorry to repeat myself, identify an outcome. And this includes a couple of things. First, if you've already facilitated a computational thinking program before, reflect on your previous programs and participants. What do you think you've achieved? What did you want to achieve? Okay? If this is your first time facilitating a program, which I see a few of you are, think of what do you want youth to gain from the program. If you're unsure, consult someone at the library or ask the community. For the Impact Libraries outcome list, from the link that was posted by Nitsan, you can then select the outcome that best describes what you want to achieve. And then you go and select a tool. When you see the selections of tools that are given to you, once you select an outcome, you will see an eye icon that you can click, that you can watch the video and learn more about the assessment tool that you've chosen. And then you should consider your program's needs, yourself and your participants. Are you comfortable administrating the tool? Think about your participants, think about your plan, okay? And then select which one you want to use, bring all the decisions that you just made together and make your tool selection. So now David and Nitsan are going to share the two of the tools that we have built. So I'm going to hand it over to David.
Wonderful. Thanks, Megha. So the first of the two tools that we want to introduce to you today, we call the Build Your Own Interview Protocol, or BYO Interview Protocol. And so over the next couple of slides, we're going to walk you through what it looks like to use this tool, from the customization all the way through the data analysis. Next slide, please, Megha. So the Build Your Own Interview Protocol is a flexible tool that allows you to create and customize your own interview with a set of questions that you find most useful based on the tools that you're using, the activities you have youth doing, and the outcomes that you're interested in measuring. You can choose to use 2 or 3 of the questions or the entirety of the protocol. And the idea here is that you modify it and customize it based on your needs and interests. In terms of how you administer the interview, you can either conduct it as part of a focus group or one-on-one interview, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a couple slides. And then finally, as part of our computational thinking assessments, we provide a set of resources to help you make sense of the interview data that you get over the course of the interviews that you conduct. Next slide, please, Megha. So the first step in the process is to prepare the interview protocol that you want to use. And so this begins by you making a copy of the full interview that we provide. So in this case, we're looking at the Access and Equity Build Your Own Interview Protocol. And what you can see here is a series of questions. The questions are in that leftmost column. And you can imagine going through the process of reading over all of the questions and deciding which ones to include and exclude based on what you're interested in and how long you want to spend with each person that you're interviewing. The questions will also include some red text that, in this case, it says insert concept or software here. The idea being that this is a way for us to let you know to customize that question based on the tools or the specifics of the program. And so the first part of preparing the interview is to decide what questions you want to ask and customizing them to match your program. And then choosing the method that you want to conduct the interview in and deciding how and when you want to ask the questions. Next slide, please. So once you're done preparing your questions, you can collect the data by conducting the interviews using your preferred method. This can be done either in a one-on-one setting or as part of a focus group. Next slide, please. So for focus groups, the idea is that you would be interviewing a small group of youth who participated in your program. So this could be 2 or 3 or even as many as 5 or 6. And a feature of focus groups is it provides opportunities for youth not just to answer questions based on their own experiences, but to hear from their peers and kind of collaboratively build responses to questions. These types of focus groups these types of interviews can be really productive when it's a more collaborative activity. And so no one youth has participated in the entirety of it. And so having a group that has just been working together kind of share out their experiences together can be productive. Or if you know that there are some students who are good friends and get along well and share ideas with each other, or if there are more quiet students who you think might be more responsive to questions if asked in a group setting. Next slide, please. You could also conduct these interviews in one-on-one formats. So for example, as exit interviews, so this would be just kind of catching a youth participant kind of toward the end of the session as they're on their way out to ask them a question or two about their experience with programming they just went through. Or you could also conduct these interviews during the program itself. And so this would be as a youth is going through and doing the program, you could kind of ask some questions about what they're working on and how they're feeling about it and what they're liking, what they're not liking. A feature of these one-on-one interviews is that it's often possible to go into more depth in terms of the responses because it's one-on-one. If a youth provides a particular response, you could kind of ask some follow-on questions based on what they say and get some more specific and detailed examples of or feedback kind of in a more conversational form. Next slide, please. Some best practices for conducting these interviews is first to encourage youth to provide examples when answering questions. And so in asking them for specific examples, it helps make their responses much more concrete, especially if you're asking about things like their experiences or feelings or levels of interest or something that's just a little more abstract. Asking them to provide specific examples based on the program can be productive. Another thing to consider is combining interviews with other types of assessment tools. A real strength of interviews is getting detailed answers in youth's own words, but it can also be a bit time consuming. And if you have a program with 30 or 40 youth participating, conducting that many interviews can be really time consuming. And so you can imagine combining it with an assessment type that scales well in terms of being able to get some high level or basic feedback from all 30 or 40 participants. So you can imagine kind of balancing the detailed data you get from an interview with the more broader interview data you might get from feedback boards or a survey or something like that. Next slide, please. So after collecting the data, the next step is to analyze and reflect on the data that you've collected. So what we're showing here is an example of the facilitator guide that comes along with each of the assessment, or each of the build your own interview protocols that we provide. So as we saw before, the leftmost column has a list of questions to ask. So what you can do after completing the interview, and some people will do this in real time as they're doing it, but often it's a bit easier to do after the fact, is to type in student answers to the questions as you go. And doing your best to get direct quotes when you can, but just in general capturing the thoughts shared. And then the rightmost column is to identify action items. So here we have an example. The questions that we're using as our example are from the Access and Equity Interview Protocol, and asking participants if they got to play with a new piece of tech as part of the program, and if so, what was it? And then asking them, do you have the tools that you used in this program at home or at your school? And then looking across the responses from students, we can see for the most part that students were enthusiastic about the program, and most of them had responses there. And so what we want to show is what it looks like to go from the responses we get into the specific action items that students might provide. So Megan, if you can hop to the next slide, please. And so in going through, we saw from the quotes that most of the students seem to enjoy the program. And so in terms of taking a step back and reflecting on the data we collected, thinking about, well, based on the fact that most of the students seem to have a positive experience, saying things like it was fun and they enjoyed it, an action item that we might identify based on that piece of data is that this seems like a promising program that we want to run again, because for the most part, the youth seem to enjoy it. Next slide, please. A second point to raise from reflecting on the data was that only one participant had used the robot before, and another one, only one participant had used the robot, but another participant actually had the robot alongside that. And so thinking about action items based on the fact that some of the participants had some exposure to the robot is thinking about ways to support both true beginners who've never used that tool before, as well as ways to engage participants who might have had some time with that robot or extended time with the robot if they had it at home. So thinking about both introductory activities for the beginners, as well as challenges or customizations that allow participants who have more experience to stay engaged kind of across these levels of prior exposure to the technology. Slide, please. And then from the interview responses, we learned that 4 out of the 5 participants had computers at home. And so a follow-on action item from that is acknowledging that because everyone has these basic computer skills, it informs an appropriate level to start with so that you can begin the program at an appropriate level of difficulty and not spend too much time kind of going over basics that that we know that participants have experience with, but instead can kind of find that right entry point in for students to hit the ground running in terms of being engaged with the program right from the get-go. And with that, I will pass it to Nitsan, who's going to talk about Talkback Boards.
Thank you, David. So the Talkback Boards, I'm going to talk through the same process. Mika, you can go to the next slide, please. So Talkback boards are digital or paper posters or whiteboards that you can put together really quickly and easily. They're usually used with one prompt per board, which makes them simple, quick to administer, quick to answer as well. And then you can ask for anonymous or name feedback from participants. Depending on your familiarity with participants, you might want to do either or, and I'll share a few examples in the next few slides. And the analysis is also built to understand both numerical and qualitative responses from participants, so you can kind of get the full picture. Next slide, please. So when you're preparing to use the Talkback boards, you need to think of 3 very important things. First of all, you will start with selecting a statement. Talkback boards that we offer with the different outcomes are representing different statements. So you might want to choose the statement that resonates best with your program, and then think of how it will speak to the participants. Then you will choose the delivery mode and the timing. So delivery mode can be digital. So you can share a link to the board, or you can hang a board in your library and ask participants to respond to it physically. And then think of when are you going to share the board with youth? Are you going to do it at the end of the program? You want to do it kind of in the middle when they're working on activities? And finally, when you know all of that, you can set up the board, and you need to make sure you have the board placed at the library, or you have a link to share with participants. Next slide, please. So here you can see 2 examples from participants in our study that were contributing those pictures to us. So on the left-hand side, you can see a paper-based board that was just cuts of the questions placed on a whiteboard at the library, and then the facilitator handed over sticky notes with the names of participants to hang on the board where they agree with the statement. And on the right-hand side, you can see a digital Jamboard that comes as is. You can just share the link for youth to place sticky notes or just colorful stickers on the board, and they can respond or put any yes, no responses on them as they want. Next slide, please. And then how do you collect the data using the board? So here are a few best practices as well. One thing to mention here that is important is to provide an opportunity for an honest response by allowing youth to respond privately. If you feel like they're gonna struggle with that part, you can have them respond individually to the board by placing it somewhere private and sending them individually to go and respond. Or if you feel like they're okay, it's fine to also just send everybody to respond. It's really easy to do with the digital Jamboard because they don't need to log in. They can just click the link and then they can provide their feedback, and no one knows who placed which sticker where. And then after administrating the Talkback boards, we recommend following up with interview questions. So David presented the build your own interview protocol. We have some examples of participants who use the both tools together to ask follow-up questions on the responses, which gives you more information on why they chose to place the sticker where they did, and you can get some elaboration. And then we also recommend to use and keep both the negative and positive statements of the statements that you will see with the boards, so you can capture the entire spectrum of experiences. Next slide, please. So through the analysis of the Talkback boards data, you will find this type of analysis worksheet. It looks a little bit different now, but this is an actual example from one of the staff members who used the tool. So based on what you see right now, there were 11 participants in the program, and each of them placed a sticker in one statement. So based on the responses, 10 out of 11 showed perseverance. That was a board to measure CT dispositions. And you can see that one participant was frustrated but didn't give up, which shows that there is still level for improvement, but it's okay. No one placed a sticker where it was a negative response. And then once you plug in the numbers and counting the stickers and plugging them in the table, you can see below a graph that represents the different responses based on the percentage out of the participants in the program. So you can immediately get kind of an understanding of what happened and where you should go to improve the program next. Next slide, please. And with the graph and table, you will also get a set of questions that will ask you questions for reflection. So here you can see kind of examples for things to highlight when you're going over the questions. We recommend to do kind of a three-way process. The first thing you do is simply answer the questions based on what you know. And then you kind of want to go through your answers and reflect on the things you see repeating. For example, in question 1, what were the youth participants doing to show perseverance? So you see that the staff member answered that most would reset and start again when they ran into a problem. That is showing a demonstration of perseverance. Ask the facilitator to explain. One got frustrated, but they were able to assist them. And then when you go over the different questions, you can see different ways of answering and kind of highlights of things that she identified and then used for action items. So here what we can summarize is that most were able to persevere through the issues. One was frustrated, most asked for help, and there seemed to be a learning process happening from the beginning and the end, as you can see at the last kind of question. Next slide, please. And after you kind of highlighted your big themes from your answers, you will go and reflect on them and think, what can you do next time to improve it? So you can see the actual action items that the facilitator wrote for herself. So she plans to give perseverance patients pep talks. So she wants to encourage participants next time. Maybe the one that was more frustrated can use that pep talk. She also wants to incorporate breaks to check progress and see how they're doing. So they may not ask for help so many times. They will come to her only when they really need her and will try by themselves. And she might make sure that during the progress checks, she also checks levels of frustration, so she can have a break that was not planned into the program, but now she feels the crowd, feels the level of frustration, and she can stop and continue later. Next slide, please. So that is it for the Talkback boards. Now we're going to wrap up with a summary of our website. We'll show you a few images of the different pages you should maybe take a look, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. Next slide, please. So the page you can see on the screen right now is the page of the resources that we shared before in the chat. This is the assessment tool page where you can choose the different outcomes you would measure, and then you'll see a list of the assessment tools available for each outcome when you click the different outcomes. Next slide, please. If you click the eye icon, you will find this video and a description, more information on each assessment tool to learn more about each of them. This will take you to a YouTube video explaining the whole process from start to end, how you're copying the tools, what to do, how the facilitator guide looks like, examples, everything is in that video. Next slide, please. And then we also invite you to visit the case studies page, which is a page collecting the stories of the staff participating in our project and how they went about using the assessment tools in different types of programs. That will be useful for you if you know what is the program you have, or you know what is the outcome you have, or the type of community you're serving. You can filter with the different filters on the left-hand side of the page and discover more. And then you can even filter by mode of delivery. So if you're having an online program, check out the online programs that facilitators had before and kind of take a few examples out of that. And I'll hand it over to Mega.
Thank you so much, Nitsan. So we have shared 2 tools with you today. And Rachel Bennett, who's here, is going to launch a poll. So which of the assessment tools shared today would you like to use? It seems like it's only allowing one choice. So if you can choose one, maybe you want to use both, but choose the best one or the ones that you really want to use. And then we'll share their poll results. So I'm going to give you just maybe a couple of minutes, maybe just a couple of seconds to do that. It's just a single click. Let's see who wins the popularity contest today, either the interview protocol or the Talkback Boards. All right, Rachel, would you like to show us the results of the poll? Okay, so we do have a very clear winner, Talkback Boards, and I'm not really surprised, right? Because I think the Talkback Boards are really things that you can just put in your area where the program is running, and you get the feedback directly from you. Probably lesser consuming time than their interviews. So that is great. Thank you for sharing that poll results, Rachel. All right, so with that, I would like to thank all the library staff who have participated in this actually it's a little bit more than 3 years of work. So we had over 90 librarians, library staff that have worked with us throughout this project. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much to all of you. This work wouldn't have been done to the point that we have it now if it was not for all the library staff who worked with us. To our advisory board meeting, board members who met with us a couple of times a year, who have been giving us really great feedback and really pushed us to be more innovative and really push our own sort of expectations that we had for this project. So I really appreciate that. To Institute of Museum and Library Services for generously funding this work. It will not be possible if IMLS did not fund our work. And to all of you who attended today, thank you so much. you can reach us at impact@umd.edu if you have any questions. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And with that, thank you.